Hey everybody, I'm Marcus Hazelwood, and welcome to Clear Haze Exchange. I'm an energy engineer with over 15 years of experience in sustainability and energy efficiency consulting. Many find these topics a little complex, so I created Clear Haze Exchange to help provide clear, actionable insight, clearing the haze, so to speak. We'll cover plenty of topics under the umbrella of energy efficiency and sustainability. Let's get into today's conversation. Welcome, listeners, to Season 2 of Clear Haze Exchange, focusing on uncovering the hidden systems shaping sustainability and operational performance. Today's guest I'm really excited about is Hélène. Hélène is the founder of Circular Workplaces, a consultancy helping organizations reduce waste by redesigning the systems behind procurement, workplace operations, and employee behavior. Previously global head of circular economy and zero waste at CBRE, Hélène has spent more than a decade leading circular economy and waste reduction programs across complex workplaces, including banking, healthcare, aviation, and corporate real estate portfolios. Her work challenges a common assumption in sustainability that waste is primarily a disposal problem. Instead, she views waste as a signal, revealing where cost, carbon, and operational value are quietly leaking out of workplace systems. Hélène, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marcus, for having me. Hi, everyone.
Tell us where you're located.
So I am in London today. And as I was saying, it is a very hot day today in London. But originally, I'm from France. I've been in the UK for the last 10 years, even more than 10 years, I guess. But originally from the south of France.
Great. So you said, and this is something that we had a conversation prior to starting this interview, you said that if there's waste, there's a problem. And that really stuck with me. So I'm excited to dig more into what you mean by that. So could you elaborate on that and how it frames why you're passionate about waste reduction?
Absolutely. I think that waste is like such a tangible aspect of how unsustainable things are currently working. And it's like this evidence that things are inefficient, and like within the workplace context, that is an evidence that we are perhaps ordering too much of something, or perhaps people aren't using the workplace in the way they should be. And it's also like, a proof that there is cost that's lost, carbon that's lost. And so I think that's like very interesting to me, to look at waste as this indicator that there are inefficiencies and it shouldn't really be there. And that's also representing that opportunity that we can use waste to do things better. I mean, we can use that indicator, that evidence, to learn what could be done better.
That's good. That makes sense. So many organizations focus heavily on recycling campaigns and employee behavior. But why do you believe that the approach misses the real issue in many cases?
I think what's difficult with recycling is that there are so many points of failures for recycling to be successful. There needs to be a lot of wins in a complicated chain of events. So first of all, you need to have recyclable materials. Then you need people to put it into the right container. Then you need the cleaner to put it into the right bin at the loading bay. Then you need the contractor to take it to the right place. And then you need to trust that, what's happening after it's gone to a recycling facility is that recycling is getting recycled into new materials. And so that makes it super hard to get it right. And often, I've worked in the workplace sector for more than 10 years. Every time I look into a recycling bin, it's always contaminated. That's the first thing. And then people are always saying like, oh, why should I recycle? Because then the cleaners, they put all the bags together in the same trolley. And then the cleaners, they're saying, oh, why should we do the right thing? Because the contractor is like taking all of the waste together. And so I think there's a bit of like a lot of effort going into like recycling campaign, but not a lot of success from recycling campaigns. And I think that we need to move away from like focusing so much on recycling, because it's just so hard to get it right along all of the chain. And it's also not very transparent in terms of whether it's successful or not. And actually where there is more control is within waste reduction, because that's happening within the control of the contracts within the workplace. So when we're purchasing stuff, we can decide not to purchase stuff, or we can decide to purchase whatever is going to go back to the manufacturer. And so at that point, there's more control. And so it's easier, I think, than when we are focusing on recycling campaigns, because then there's no evidence that it's actually working, the recycling campaign.
So you mentioned how companies should focus more on procurement, and what's given to people upstream. So when people have certain products and they're disposing of them or recycling them, that has a heavy weight on how waste is generated. So why is that shift so important? Thinking about how procurement can control outgoing waste.
So I can speak about an example that will make sense and hopefully will resonate as well with listeners. We've seen like big shifts in a lot of workplaces to like being greener and like, stopping buying like single-use plastics. And so there's been like a big switch on moving from single-use plastics to compostable material, for example. So often that's like a procurement initiative to be more sustainable. They bring in compostable coffee cups or compostable serviceware within catering operations, because that's not plastic, so that looks good. But then on the waste side, actually, those compostable items can't really be composted because generally there is not enough infrastructure to compost those items. And that's like a global concern. And then facilities management teams are finding themselves with like those compostable packaging that looks good on one end, and then on the other hand, you can't do anything with it. So then there's like still a lot of waste because it cannot go into the food waste bin. It can't actually get composted, and that's like a really like super simple example of where procurement has the opportunity to buy the right thing so that it doesn't create waste. And in that case, like buying compostable packaging without consulting what happens at the end of life means that there's still waste at the end of life. And so I think that that key is held by the procurement team, whereby at the end they can decide, what's coming into the building. So this is what the key is held in terms of like how materials are flowing inside the building. And so I think it's important to get procurement on board with understanding why they should prioritize waste reduction, because this is where is the simplest, basically, in terms of managing the end of life of whatever is coming into the building.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. They kind of hold the key, right?
Yeah, hold the key. Yeah.
Yeah, so your work reframes waste as a signal, you say, and it's a signal of operational inefficiency. So what kinds of hidden costs tend to surface when organizations really examine waste streams?
So there are like costs that are directly associated with the waste. So like the most obvious one is the disposal cost. So that's the one that you actually see in your invoices. Like everyone is very aware about like the disposal cost of their waste. What people don't see is that waste also has a cost of procurement first. So for example, any coffee cups or like food waste or any packaging has a cost of purchase, and then it's being used once, or sometimes it's not being used at all, and then it's being disposed of. So there's like a double cost, downstream and upstream. The upstream cost is we never speak about it as a waste cost, but it really should be. And then there's like regulatory costs, that are increasing in certain regions, in certain states in the US. Either waste is being taxed, but also packaging is being taxed. So that means that workplaces are going to be indirectly put under cost pressure from increasing cost of waste disposal and increasing cost of purchasing packaging. And that's a hidden cost of waste that people don't realize because it's not showing as a line in their invoice. And then I think that, if we kind of like take a step back from just the waste, there is, a reputational cost to waste. Waste, like I said, is not always the most transparent industry. And so when we are not 100% sure what happens to the waste we are asking waste contractors to take away from sites, then there is a risk that that waste is being mismanaged. And if it is found to be mismanaged, then it's a massive reputational risk for organizations. And, there's a cost to that. And I think there's also like a cultural cost. There's a lot of like research that talks about how newer generations, they're wanting more from their employers. They want spaces where they can feel that they have an impact on the world, that they want to be change maker. They want to see their employers is enabling that, and not doing anything about waste is a very big missed opportunity for companies, because that's such a great way to show that you're doing something about sustainability to employees. So not doing anything about it potentially would have a cost on, your how you are portraying yourself as sustainable to your employees.
Wow. There's a lot of different areas that we don't think about where that cost is generated. Where I live, our trash and recycling is picked up and there's a fee that we pay. But in some cities, it's covered, but there's a tax. But when you do examine waste streams, is it a percentage of operational costs that you could identify, or what's the
Yeah.
scale?
So for the taxes, like what we're trying to do is that we understand like where we're looking at the waste, and then what are the regulations and how do they work. And we talk about what is the tax that is going to be incurred by whoever needs to pay the tax. I think what's hidden in the case of workplaces or people, like you said yourself, you're not seeing those taxes, that these then are used as commercial lever by companies that are removing the waste from you. And so actually, like the cost actually is higher, probably likely to be higher than what the actual tax is, because companies are going to profit from those additional taxes. So I think in terms of what that represents, that could be like an increase in waste costs by like 20% or something like that across 5 years. So for a case study that, I know we're going to talk a bit about it shortly, it was like an increase of about 20% on waste costs. That's, tax related.
So in the Circular Workplace Summary, which is a document that you'll share with us a little bit, you mentioned that in the UK, a 2,000 person office can lose over 1.6 million pounds, which would be about 1.8 in US dollars over 5 years. With much of it avoidable, where are those losses actually happening?
Yeah, so for that case study specifically, there was like a large catering operation. I mean, there's a lot of workplaces that have large catering operations. Most of the loss for them was they had a lot of food waste, so it was around the food waste for that specific case, and it was upstream. The biggest cost was purchasing food that was not eaten and then that was disposed of, but the cost of procuring that food waste is what was the most expensive. So this is where really they need to work on reducing that upstream. It's like crazy, I guess, to be spending so much money on food that's not eaten. I think that kind of like is a massive opportunity for companies for FM as well, to like really support the way in which we are designing workplaces, like making it better for people while be mindful of not buying too much food that is going to be wasted.
Yeah, and that's a significant amount of money wasted. And is this in just overbuying? Like, are you equating those dollar amounts to just overbuying and the amount probably consumed by those office occupants versus what's wasted, and then kind of proportioning that amount of procurement purchases for food? Like, could you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, so we just look at what the food waste is, like the food wastage. So in that case, we tried to understand what was the breakdown of the waste. And then we, from understanding what the food wastage was, we just said for that amount of food waste, this is how much it costs to buy 1 ton of food, like to procure 1 ton of food, and we're using like industry average from the UK for this one, which was about £2,500 to £3,000 to procure 1 ton of food that you're going to eat. So this is how we made that calculation for this one.
That's good. And do you see many organizations evaluating that? I know that's what you help them understand,
Yeah.
but how often are they paying that much attention to it?
Well, I think they're not, and that's why I created circular workplaces, is because I think there's like a gap in understanding the true cost of waste. And like you said, everyone is so focused on the downstream element of it. Like, let's try to recycle more. But it's not, I mean, it's all right to recycle more, but it's not like the best we can do, because most of the opportunity is not in recycling. It is in like that waste reduction. And I don't think that companies are focusing on that, because they're not seeing it in in their invoice. There's a line for waste disposal, and then they're only thinking about how to decrease that waste disposal line. And, even within facilities management, waste management is a procurement category that's managed separately from the other procurement categories. So there is very little um, there's very little collaboration between the different procurement categories, yet the best way to divert waste would be to have it within the catering category in that example, or the cleaning category. I haven't really seen that. And, when we are when I used to work on large FM tenders, it was always the same thing, right? Waste reduction or waste recycling was only part of like the waste management scope, and it was never part of like the wider bid. And I think this is where there's missed opportunity, and that's something I'm trying to, highlight to people, that it's not just a waste problem. Actually, it's not a waste problem. It's like a procurement problem. Waste is just like showing why it's not working upstream.
Makes a lot of sense. And that's a good point for people to understand when you're allocating resources within your organization, understanding whether or not they're working against each other is
Yeah.
important. And this is a good area to highlight. You talk about creating better workplaces and workplaces people love. And what does waste reduction have to do with that?
Absolutely. I actually, obviously I am passionate about reducing waste, but I am more passionate about creating amazing workplaces. Like, I am a fan of people coming together, like wanting to be in the office, spend time around lunch, like have coffee, hang out in the office. I think this is where workplaces kind of need to go towards. Like, they need to be those like really cool places that are just, people don't want to stay home, they want to go to work. I think that waste reduction can be a lever to get to that position. So my end goal is not waste reduction, but it's like great workplaces. And the reason why I say that is because I think that through waste reduction, we can get people to come together more around, sharing food together, for example, or having less clutter around them. We can create experiences where communities kind of come and join within the workplace, and then create experiences where, people are not only feeling that they're part of something bigger, but there's also less stuff that is just an example, like very simple, from a workplace point of view. I think it's like much better for people to come and have lunch together. Or they all go to like something that looks like a restaurant. They have like a nice plate, like mugs, like whatever, like a restaurant, rather than having people go outside of the office, get a takeaway box, and then eat it at their desk. And I think that through less waste, we can actually create those better experiences. And it's just that let's do it at the same time. Basically, this is what I'm trying to get to. I really think that uh, we can, create those moments of collaborations through shared systems where people come together. There's like stuff between people, and it's less individualistic, and it's more togetherness. Yeah.
Makes sense. The feeling of reduced waste and a nice place to feel excited about is valuable to your work environment. Everyone wants to go into a nice office. It just does something to motivation and the productivity of employees.
Okay.
Everyone increases.
And actually, something that I can add to that as well is that, I think that waste reduction is also a very good way to make workplace experience more sustainable. And there is such a big focus in FM around workplace experience being like so important because that's what gets people back in. But to create a sustainable workplace experience, one of the way to do it is to focus on that waste reduction piece. Yeah.
That makes sense. The feeling of a good work environment motivates you to want to go back and keep people in the collaborative work environment that increases productivity. How's the impact of COVID changed that from your perspective, for the better or for the worse? And what have you seen from that?
I think that during COVID, I wasn't I wasn't yet the founder of Circular Workplaces. During COVID, I was still working for ISS, and I was working within the banking sector. And it was funny because at that time we were setting up like a zero waste strategy for a large global bank, and the focus was on workplace experience. But it was challenging because at the same time, everyone was saying that disposables needed to come back to the office because of safety concerns, and we couldn't share anything between people. And so that was a massive, it was difficult. So I think that it was difficult because suddenly everyone wanted to get the disposable back. But then I think this is kind of gone now. And like there's now so much focus on trying to get people back into the office and trying to make sure this is like, like offices are like best in class in all aspects, including sustainability. And so there's like a massive opportunity to bring in that waste reduction piece to workplace experience. Yeah, I think that in the end, it was hard during COVID, but now it's kind of like for the better. I think people are motivated to not just make workplaces for the sake of having somewhere to work, but it's like more about making it so that it's actually, you know, I mean, I'd like to think that that we should make workplaces a force for good. And I think that COVID kind of like helps with pushing that so that, people go to the office with purpose.
Yeah. So, last question in this area of the workplace. How do better workplace systems improve not just sustainability outcomes, but employee engagement? We talked about the value of productivity, but how would you say engagement increases? Is it more so a mental things, but how would you say it contributes to productivity?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely this sense of, I understand that my employer is doing something great about the environment, but I think also there is this sense of now there are more opportunities to share moments with colleagues and like have collaboration. So for example, I know I talk a lot about food, but because this is like the easiest thing to talk about, but people coming together to enjoy a meal with their team, then suddenly they feel like they're part of something. Maybe they have more, chance to collaborate and like to be heard rather than if it was more of a takeaway culture. I think that this is where it goes beyond sustainability. It's about like bringing people together. And I think that the other thing is obviously the business side of things. So there's like a massive cost saving element to this. So that's something that workplaces can also become more efficient with less waste. That's a great way for them to do that.
Yeah. I want to get into an example that you have to kind of walk us through. What does this look like in terms of helping an organization get to this place where they understand procurement? As you mentioned, procurement is key. So walk us through the circular workplace approach from beginning to end, and how does the process actually work? And for some of our listeners, if you're listening audio only, you should be able to follow along, but there's also the YouTube channel to where you may be able to see the graphics shared here.
Right. So the way we help clients at circular workplaces, so we start by making waste visible. That's kind of where it all starts. And to do that, we what we call waste open day. So I'm going to share that on my screen just now, so whoever is on the YouTube can see. And so it's basically like a repeatable pop-up kit that we deliver to client sites, and it collects like 8 different material streams for a day. It's used instead of bins for a day, and so the teams are kind of taking part in sorting and seeing the waste firsthand. And the idea with that is that we wanted to do like a waste audit, but that's not taking part in the back of house, but that's kind of happening, in front of people, and people are actually actors in it, but they don't have to, sort, like do a bin dive. So it's just very like low effort for people, but they can still see it happening and they can learn something about waste. And we can have green teams members to take part in this. And we have like a whole set of comms as well to make this like an event, something fun that people can learn from. At the end of the day, we get weights on each of those material streams, and then we reveal what is the cost and carbon hotspot, as well as a little culture assessment that we would have run through surveys throughout the day. And so the idea with this Waste Open Day, which is our like entry point, is to get immediate engagement with employees, create that visibility, that talking point, and then understand, who needs to own the actions, and get a standard way of looking at waste. So like if a client has got like multiple locations in multiple countries, they can still run the same event across those locations, and they would have a standardized report across those different locations.
Makes
And
sense.
then so that's the starting point. Sorry. And then from there we get into so we've got this data. It's a report. That report is kind of looking at what is the cost impact, what is the carbon impact, what is the cultural impact, and then we make recommendations to support the client on improving their workplace over time. And the idea is that the client can take this and like kind of carry on themselves, and then they can repeat the Waste Open Day as often as they want to kind of create some benchmark. But we also can help clients with addressing those recommendations and helping them with, solving the problems that they need to solve today, and then start engaging the different stakeholders to, target waste reduction in order to save money upstream. And then to set up like KPIs for procurement teams within their guidelines, their policy, and set up some operating procedures for achieving zero waste. So we can support clients in their journey around that. So if they didn't have like the budget, or like the bandwidth to continue the circular workplaces program by themselves, then we can provide that as a fractional support. And then once that's working, we can help clients with scaling that across multiple locations that they have. So if they wanted to, start with one location and then they want to do that across their portfolio, then we can help with just managing that process for them and like running pilots if they wanted to, and just be there as their circular economy specialist within the workplace.
That's good. So you described this model as the loop between what's bought, used, and wasted. What does that operationally look like, the improvement version?
Yes, absolutely. So I can talk about the coffee cups. So let's say we do a waste open day, and then we realize that the biggest issue is disposable coffee cups. There's a lot of disposable coffee cups. So let's say all of the coffee cups are coming from within the building. So there is a coffee shop in the building, and we find that everyone is using coffee cups. They're not using the provided mugs. They're only using disposable cups. So we would assess that this is the biggest cost opportunity and this is the biggest carbon opportunity as well. And then we can make an assessment of what is the cost of this. And then we can look at what does it look like? What are the opportunities to reduce that? So then we would need to work with procurement to, assess whether there's like a reusable option, whether that's going to be like, reusable cups that are going to be washed by the cleaning team, or whether there's going to be like maybe mugs that are going to be given to the employees and they need to wash it themselves. And so we do that work with the procurement team to assess what is the most viable solution that will help them with reducing that cost and reducing that waste. And we also work with the workplace team to make sure that is actually possible to put in place and to achieve. So that's an example. Maybe another example around the coffee cup, because I just did one report recently, and we found that despite having a coffee shop within the office and having free coffee for employees, people are still going outside to buy a coffee from Starbucks, for example. And so there's still a lot of coffee cups that are disposed of within the workplace. So then that's very interesting, right? Because it's like the workplace is offering coffee, but people are still like going out to get their own coffee, and then they're bringing their waste back in. So this is like a cultural, I think, like issue more so than a procurement issue, but we can work with procurement teams and workplace teams to see how we can offer employees like a reusable takeaway cup, let's say, that they can take out and then bring back in, for example. So we can also help organizations work out, if they can be like a preferential discount, maybe with like a local independent coffee shop, whereby you can bring your coffee cup from the workplace and then you get that discount and then you come back. And I think this is where it becomes interesting, right? Because it kind of the possibility of like of the benefit going beyond the workplace becomes quite exciting, I think.
Yeah, that's an interesting, I don't know if I would call it interference, but a curveball, I guess, thrown into where waste is not fully controlled by procurement. So then you have
Yeah.
to pivot to think about, okay, how can we help influence that when
Yeah.
people are certainly looking for, I know I've been part of an organization where the coffee just wasn't good at the
Yeah.
office. So, we got to find something else.
Yeah, and so that would be a procurement issue, right? Like, it's why do people go for their coffee outside? If their coffee is not great, then maybe this is also a sign that something needs to happen from within procurement to make coffee better. And it sounds like I mean, it's nothing, but actually it is important that people have coffees together because it's like a more relaxed environment. And like when you have coffee with your colleagues, you're actually collaborating and like you're making friends. And so it's important. And this is what I mean, by creating like shared experiences, better moments with employees. When you keep your people
Yeah.
inside and they have a nice coffee in a nice cup inside the office, there's more chances of them coming together and having like a chat. And it doesn't always need to be about work, but it needs to create like some kind of like friendship, I suppose, within employees so that they actually love to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It's coming together more and more. The more, because
Yeah.
it's not something I think about all the time. It doesn't come to mind the values of having a place where you can collaborate outside of just work, but
Yeah.
having a space where you're intrigued to collaborate beyond work and build relationships,
Yeah.
which then build relationships in the work environment. So it's very
Absolutely.
valuable.
Yeah.
So once organizations identify those upstream issues, what types of changes usually create the biggest impact first?
Yeah. So I've done some work recently around this and how I structure my recommendations to clients. And I don't know if you're familiar with, there's like a framework from McKinsey called the 3 Horizons. And that's like how to get to the world that we want to get to. So like this better world, and like in this case, the better workplace. And basically is the idea that there's 3 different horizons. And so like, the first one is how do we improve the current system? So how do we make the current system a little bit better? And so in this example, it was for the workplace. In that case study that I just did recently, it was, okay, how do we improve simple stuff? Like how do we improve just like the signage on the bin? How do we make sure we've got enough waste streams? That's how the current system is, right? It's focused on recycling. So we need to kind of like go through that. The second horizon is how do we leverage existing innovations for the workplace that are actually making the workplace environment less wasteful. So that would be companies that have reusable cup scheme that you can borrow and then return. That's an innovation that could be put in place in the workplace. So it's like focusing on like what's already out there. How do we leverage what's out there and then put it in place into our workplace? And then the last one is the third horizon is about how do we then co-create, innovate better workplaces with clients. So at that point, it's more about like how do we bring the right stakeholder. What we would suggest is to now we've got this data. Let's all gather around a workshop and like bring in key stakeholders and really discuss how we make this workplace, something that's like actually amazing for both people, planet, businesses, and surrounding communities. And in that example, that office sits nearby local food markets. It's like independent small businesses that are that really wanted to get more business. And so I think there's an opportunity there maybe to bring them into the workplace, that keeps people in. You make sure that food is served in reusables. People are excited. They don't go out anymore to get their food. And you really make the workplace better at the same time as reducing the waste and also including outside communities. Something else in that kind of space is like, how do you grow food maybe inside your workplace? Like, people, they go outside, they want to eat salad. Why don't you grow salad inside your workplace? Like, why not? And so I think this is part of the recommendation of like bringing this innovate the workplace is about co-creating something with the right stakeholders, but with that vision that, we're creating something that's better, genuinely better, not just improving the current system, which we know is not really working.
That's good. I know it would excite me if maybe the local cafe is sourcing their lettuce from a rooftop garden or, things like that. It just feels good to know that
Yeah.
certain things are handled inside sustainably. And there may be good restaurants and there's always going to be other, options nearby that you can walk to. But when there is more value inside of the workplace, it kind of
Yeah,
makes you feel good
absolutely.
about what you're contributing to. It all makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was discussing with someone recently as well, where they were they created like a roof garden for like a roof kitchen garden. So they were growing like herbs and salads and stuff. And then there was like an employee network group that was focusing on looking after the garden. So it
Okay.
was so great, right? Because they would do that like at lunchtime. They would kind of like look after the garden, and then the food was kind of used in like the kitchen area. So it's kind of like a whole loop, and like making this is what I mean, I suppose, by making the workplace more than the workplace, right? People are excited to go
Yeah.
there because there's more purpose to it.
Yeah. Where do you think the weight of the decision lies in comparison to what the employees can influence in their work environment versus what is an organization's mission and pursuit to making it happen? Could you speak a little bit on that?
I think that it has to. I mean, I don't know. I would say that it has to come from like top. I think employees would be keen to get involved, but I think that at the end of the day, companies it might have to come from companies, and also it's their reputation that's at risk. Employees, like they can. I mean, why? I mean, they want to care, but like they could also move companies if they didn't care, right? I mean, so I think it needs to come from within, and I think that what I'm trying to do as well with the waste open day and like that data that we're getting is to build that business case that shows that it's not just about the waste disposal cost. It's not just about the waste disposal carbon, but it's much bigger than that. And actually, the business case is like much more like it's bigger than like what we think when we're just looking at the waste data. And this is the opportunity, right? It's like if there was no waste and you use all of that money to create something better with no waste, could you do it? Could we do it? And when and this is the case for it, I guess.
So, kind of in closing and thinking about all these valuable points to implement in the workplace, if companies made one mindset shift tomorrow, what would create the largest operational and environmental impact?
I think that as it relates to waste and circular economy, and like, I think that one quick mindset that could be, mindset change that could be done is to, stop to focus just on recycling. And the way to do that would be, instead of just having landfill diversion targets or recycling targets, like instead of just having downstream targets, let's put a couple of targets upstream around purchasing, like around recycled content, around reusables, around limiting single use coming in. It's easier to track, and that has got more impact than what's happening downstream, and it's more transparent as well. So that's what I would say could be a easy mindset shift. Let's just put more targets upstream rather than focusing on the downstream.
That's good. And then looking ahead, what would you hope organizations begin to measure differently? I think it was a really good point that you made about how procurement has a way of influencing, but there's also some departments that almost work against each other in a way. But what would you hope that organizations begin to measure differently?
I think diversion is not measured in the best way. I think that when we're talking about landfill diversion, we're only focusing on waste, and the best diversion would be to not have waste, and that's not being measured. So I think that we do need to find ways to incentivize waste reduction, waste avoidance, and like I said before, I think the way to do that is to put targets upstream and focus on that rather than focusing on the landfill. That's something that I've seen, for example, is that organizations, they're recycling a lot of paper. That's great because that's like pumping their recycling numbers. But then as soon as they put in place like a paper reduction initiative, then their recycling rate is kind of decreasing. And so it doesn't look as good. Yet they've been reducing paper. So like it should be looking better than it used to. So this is where there's a little bit of a gap in the way we measure stuff.
That's good. Well, Aline, thanks for sharing this valuable perspective on understanding the workplace. A lot of good information that can be applied, helping organizations making the right decisions around the workplace. There's a valuable asset that companies have, which is their employees. And when they are more productive, profitability, creativity, collaboration, when all that increases, it's a win-win. There's a lot of good value to approaching this workplace in a sustainable way. I love what you're doing in the circular workplace, helping organizations see gaps, as you mentioned, that can be filled. And so the audience has been enlightened. I certainly have. Anything else that you want to share as we wrap up?
Thank you so much, for having me. I think that was really a good conversation. I do want to say, I suppose, to the audience, I mean, I just want the audience to really like think about waste in a different way. Basically, it's not just waste; it's like a lot more, and like it should really be used as a leverage point to do something better.
That's good. Well, I appreciate your time. And hopefully the audience enjoyed this conversation, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Clear Haze Exchange. New episodes drop every 2 weeks. You can catch Clear Haze Exchange on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, and more. Let's clear the haze about sustainability and energy efficiency together. Subscribe now and join the conversation.